review compliance with the prescribed or third party, to collect lawfully admissible evidence with the view to facilitate the institution of disciplinary proceeding, to identify and quantify losses incurred by NSFAS, and to pursue any applicable civil action, including action involving the cancellation of agreement, recovery of losses, and due payments made, and also to provide recommendation for possible disciplinary or criminal actions against implicated officials or party, facilitate the potential registration of criminal cases with the NPA, and to provide a recommendation on prevented in the future. Then the progress to date, the SIU commenced with the investigation on the 2nd of September 2022, and we have estimated that it will take approximately 18 months to complete the investigation. And numerous internal audit reports, forensic reports, and other reports, as well as the ministerial committee on as we start now. We are currently looking at the incorrectly funded student, the NSFAS financial management system, where we are looking at 4 projects, and closeout reports per institution, which relates to overpayments to institutions. Then these are the students whose household income is above the 350,000 and therefore will not qualify for the NSFAS funding based on the funding rules. The student did not submit their parents' details upon application and therefore awarded the bursary. And the progress to date is that we have interviewed several students and parents in order to obtain additional information pertaining to those students who were allocated the bursaries. And some students have admitted that they did not qualify to receive the NSFAS funding, of which we are currently pursuing looking at the application, the amount received by non-qualifying student. In this instance, it means that we are looking at each student one by one so that we can able to see at what point each student did not qualify, so that we can able to determine the amount of money that student who did not qualify, when or how much are they supposed to pay back from the time that they did not qualify. And we're also looking at the employment status of the student so that we can able to, that is the student who did not qualify the bursary. So this is the breakdown per province, per institution, and the number of students and the cost from 2018 to 2021. As you can see, Eastern Cape, out of 12 institutions, we have 3,842 students who did not qualify and were awarded bursary, and the cost of the bursary is 597 million. Free State goes together, also 6 institutions, number of students 2,688, and the cost is 399,000 million. Gauteng, we've got 15 institutions, and the amount of the student is 17,788 students, and the cost is 1.9 billion. KZN, 13 institutions, number of students 4,409, and the cost involved is 607 million. Limpopo, 9 institutions, 2,291 students, and the amount involved is 282 million. Mpumalanga, 4 institutions, number of students 666, and the amount involved is 55 million. Northern Cape, 3 institutions, number of students 304, and the amount involved is 22 million. Northwest, 4 institutions, number of students 2,575, and the amount involved is 361 million. And the Western Cape, it's 10 institutions, the amount the number of students is 5,481, and the amount is involved is 787 million. And when you look at the total number of students, we are looking at 76 institutions, and the number of students is 40,044. And when you look at the amount involved, it's 5.1 billion, of the amount that has been paid to unqualifying student. So that is where currently the investigation is currently looking at. We are tracing all the students so that we can identify them, and also look at the data that we'll have received from the various platforms within government like PESAL, or information pertaining to the ITC relating to their parents, whether their parents, when they apply for this bursary, were they qualifying for such bursaries. Then the next focus is looking at the various IT systems used by NSFAS in relation to NSFAS funds, that is funding the sellback systems and the use of voucher and voucher services. Here, the identification of the flaws, weaknesses, including the susceptibility of hacking and other abuse and risk related to these systems, and taking and recommending corrective measure, suitable action within consideration of existing reports such as the Ministerial Committee of Inquiry dated August. The status here is that we are considering the extent on the investigation ahead, and it is at a very early stage. Over and above identification of flaws in the system, it was inter alia. It will inter alia entails identification and quantification of damage potentially suffered, that is thousands of voucher issued and voucher service rendered in relation to thousands of students over an extensive period of several years. Then the next focus area, we are looking at the financial management system used by NSFAS. Here, the investigation will entail identification and quantification of potential overpayment and undue payments over a period of 7 years resulting from the flaws in the system concerned. Also, we're looking at the various procurement-related matters. Here, once scoping is finalized, more details will be reported on. An investigation has commenced, but it's at an early stage considering the amount of the scoping that is involved. The last one is loan and bursary to students. Here is the identification and recovery of monies unlawfully paid to students and owing by students, whether as a result of fraudulent misrepresentation made by applicants or other unlawful conduct. Here, investigation in individual matters has commenced, and flaws and weaknesses in the systems referred to above to be assessed first. Then the next focus area relates to the closeout reports per institution. This closeout report is the overpayments made to institution. Here, NSFAS failed to design and implement control to ensure that there is an annual reconciliation between the funds disbursed to the institution and the allocation of those funds to the student. The control weakness led to overpayments and undue payments of funds to the different institutions for the periods 2017 to date. However, they have recently appointed a service provider to assist them to perform this reconciliation in process called the closeout reporting. The investigation or verification of so-called closeout reports or supporting documents received from the NSFAS has commenced, and the exercise comprised the reconciliation of funds disbursed by NSFAS to institutions with the amounts that were actually due, with the view to calculate and recover potential over disbursement and amounts due to NSFAS or indicate the amount still owed to the institution. However, the reconciliation process is in its initial phase as further reconciliation and verification are underway. A pilot exercise with regard to two institutions has commenced, and based on the following table that is coming in the next, it shows the confirmation by the SOU indicate that NSFAS is due a refund in amount of, that is indicated. Let's go to the next table. Yeah, this table just shows the amount, the preliminary NSFAS closeout reports figures per province. and this is still waiting for verification by our investigation team so that we can able to ascertain the real amount that is owed by this institution to NSFAS, or the amount that NSFAS owed to the different institutions. We can see the Eastern Cape, there are 12 institutions, and the refund or payments is 418 million. Gauteng, 15 institutions, KwaZulu-Natal 13, Limpopo 9, and Mpumalanga 4, Northwest and Free State it's 10, Northern Cape 3, Western Cape 10, and the total number of students where this closeout report investigation is involved is 76, and the total amount is 300. And this process will include the process whereby we look at the number of students that apply to NSFAS from the particular institution and the amount that was paid by NSFAS to the institution. And we discovered that during the process, some of the students did not proceed to study, or they went and studied in different institutions. But NSFAS continued to pay the money, whereby when the institution received the money, instead of paying back the money to NSFAS, the money was kept waiting for the closeout report that needed to happen. So now currently, we are looking at each and every student from the beginning until when they left institution to identify whether the amount of years they studied and the amount that is paid over the years, and whether the student studied at that particular institution. And thereafter, we are able to reconcile and indicate to institution to say the students did not continue their studies. Therefore, the amount that was paid from this period until to date with the interest needs to be paid back to NSFAS. Pilot project that we have indicated, we have managed to engage 3 institutions, whereby the institution we managed to do the calculation out of the amount that was paid to those institutions and determine the amount that needs to be paid back to the NSFAS. Then you can see the first one, rent value of actual cash on asset recovered. Here the amount is 33.4 million, which was paid back on the 2nd of November 2022. Recovery of funds was due to NSFAS from an institution in the Western Cape, and the money has already been paid. Here what happened is that we approached the institution to say, we understand based on our allocation that such money was paid to you over the period of time, and as a result, this is the money that you need to pay back to NSFAS, because some of the students did not study at the institution, or they left before they could complete their studies. Therefore, the money needs to pay back to the NSFAS. As a result, we managed to enter into an acknowledgement of debt with the institution, whereby they paid the 33.4 million into the SIU account. So currently, we are still verifying this particular amount. They can pay back all the money that they paid to NSFAS. And we found that there are some contention here, because all along the money was sitting in the account, and the moment we come, or the moment we approach some of them, they quickly pay money back to NSFAS. So money was kept in the interest-bearing account, needs to be paid back to NSFAS. We can see that in terms of the 3 money that has been recovered, they amount to 38.8 million, which is from 3 different institutions that we have approached. Some of them are paying directly to NSFAS, but then in terms of the observation, Chair, the observation is that in the past, it was difficult for NSFAS to identify fraudulent applicants for students' loans or bursaries inter alia, as they did not have access to systems such as SARS, Home Affairs, ITC. At this stage, it seems that there is an improvement in their access to such information, which puts them in a better position to verify the accuracy of the representation made in the application. Example, the misrepresentation pertaining to found is that some of the students, they use their grandparents' salary advice so that they can apply because their grandparents, their salary we are currently verifying.
And the second one, there's inherent weaknesses and flaw in IT system and that has prevailed. Systems are vulnerable and can be hacked with relative case, resulting in or to unauthorized person, although some of them were incomplete. And payments information in respect of students have also been obtained. Meetings were arranged with the principals of colleges and vice chancellors of different universities to discuss the purpose and the scope of the investigation. An historical problem with the payments of landlord for students is also one of the issues that we have identified, that there are some issues pertaining to student accommodation where some of the students, they apply to be given accommodation. So there are some from NSFAS for accommodation. There's excessive payments received outstanding outside the proclamation that is from 2013. When we look at the data, we have seen that there's more excessive payments which has been made from 2013. Remember, our proclamation start from 2017 to come now. So the issue that we are assessing is to see whether we can extend the proclamation to start looking it from 2013, because we could see that there's more money that has been paid during that period of time. The lack of procedures to perform proper reconciliation of funds disbursed to students and funded list of the closeout report. And there's involvement of syndicate in student accommodation. This is another focus area that we funded, such as there is an issue of overpayment, where there's overpayment of students, where students are being given more than what they qualify for. And there's an issue of underpayments, where students are paid less. And there's also an issue of ghost student, where students do not exist, but there's funding that is being done by NSFAS to those students. And there's an unfunded student, and there's double dipping. Double dipping relates to student who goes to different institutions. They get funded into different institutions at a time. And there's an issue of dropouts, where students apply, they drop out, but the money is still being paid to the institution. And the last observation is all this implication are as a result of the fact that different governance levels and senior management staff did not fully discharge their duties in terms of all the different applicable legislation. So it's one of the observations that we have done, but we are still going on with the investigation so that we can able to identify some of those deficiencies and able to identify the person that is responsible who did not discharge their duties. Then in terms of the potential systemic recommendation, we have outlined 5 of them there. That is development of comprehensive security policy. Once the area of weakness is identified, it is important to develop a comprehensive security policy that outlines the security controls that needs to be implemented. The policy should cover everything from user access control to password management, segregation of duty, user activity log, and data backup. If such policy exists at present, is access control. That is role-based access control is a security model that restricts access to resources based on the roles and responsibility of individual user within an organization. Implementing RBAC can assist in controlling access to sensitive data and limit data damage causes by unauthorized access. Conduct regular security training. Educating NSFAS employee about security best practice is crucial to maintain a secure environment and can assist with risk associated with poor user control and help them identify potential security threats. Monitor user activity. The implementation of user activity monitoring system can assist NSFAS to identify suspicious behavior and potential unauthorized proper reconciliation of the funds disbursed to students and the funded list. internal audit must perform a root cause analysis of the misalignment between the funded student list and the NSFAS has and the list that the institution has, they don't correspond. Either has many students, the other one does not have students. So there has to be some form of the internal audit that needs to take place so that each and every student is accounted for. The next slides deal with the project team. As indicated earlier, that we estimate that the investigation is going to take more than 18 months. And this is just to show that the magnitude of the investigation, that the investigation is quite huge. We are looking at close to 40,000 students. I mean, to trace through the costs in terms of how much the investigation is going to cost. You'll see that there's a number of resources that is allocated to the investigation, and the different rank of those resources allocated, and the percentage allocation of the resource to the project, meaning that some of these investigators are not working full-time on the project, because in terms of the way we do investigation, we do it in a project base, because as you are waiting for the information, you can still do another work. So as a result, we allocate percentage into another project so that you can able to do the investigation. Thereafter, we put the total number of hours per percentage just to show that how much of time does each investigator going to spend in the investigation. And therefore, we do have a charge-out rate per category of the investigator, and therefore it gives us the total amount. So you calculate all the allocation or in terms of the time in the project, times the length of the project, together with the charge-out rate, so that it can able to give you the total cost per the number of resources that is allocated to the investigation. Then you can see there that the total estimate for the duration of the project, we are estimating close to 70 million. And this is just an estimate. In most cases, we don't go beyond it, because it doesn't mean that these people will be allocated, will be busy for the entire period. But we are doing it so that we can give the department an opportunity to budget, because we have found that in most instances, the department will come and say, we didn't budget for this, but we are indicating it upfront and say, prepare such amount for in case our investigation go further, so that we at least there is amount that is available that we can able to put in. And you'll note that once we take some of this matter to court, that will be another cost that will be involved, particularly when we try to recover some of this cost. So this is just the estimate. The written in red, it says the above is merely a project based on estimate, projection based on estimate. It's already recovered 5.1 billion that we are going to recover from the different institutions on the money that is lying on them. And looking also at the amount that the non-qualified student received, it's a huge amount that we are going to recover and able to give it to NSFAS vis-a-vis. Yeah.
I will come in and present the last two slides. Honorable Chair and honorable members, as you can see, the slide that is projected says so that the committee could really have a sense on how we determine the SIU rates. The charge-out rates that my colleague referred to are authorized by law. In terms of the SIU Act, as we investigate, we obviously have to charge the fees. So I think it is just really noteworthy to indicate that the SIU charge-out rates in the previous slide that my colleague referred to were historically determined by utilizing the Auditor General's methodology of calculating recovery rates based on actual salary. We actually discounted the Auditor General's rates by 40% to arrive at our charge-out rates. We just indicated there that for considerations that we shouldn't really be above the market but remain reasonably competitive, these rates have really remained unchanged for the past 9 years, while the private sector companies that compete with us have actually continued to increase their fees. So we have done a comparison just to ensure that we charge reasonable fees as would be expected. So now in this year, part of our business plan is to do a full review because we believe that we've been quite reasonable and with our fees for the number of years with the private sector and of course the public sector as well, and then come up with a new determination of rates. The next slide, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, really just indicates how is it that we fare compared to the private sector. We have the benefit of having a panel of service providers. And based on the panel of service providers, we've been able to determine how is it that the private sector charges. We've had the opportunity to really use this additional resources from the private sector during that demanding period of investigating the corruption and irregularities in the PPE investigation. It was so mammoth, and we had to augment our resources. So we do have these companies on our panel, and we know for a fact that they are not, if one were to say, they're not cheap. And as a result, we've really decreased the use of these companies. Since the PPE investigation, which was so intense, we've now really reduced the use of these companies. But as and when it's necessary, we do use them. But we've gone a long way, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, in creating internal capacity. We have incapacitated our unit. And this investigation, NSFAS, is largely constituted by internal investigators. We're not using private companies to investigate here. Here you can see there that the charges and their rates, of course, also like we do, are determined based on the seniority of the investigators and so on. As you can see, it starts from the project manager, forensic accountant, procurement specialist, and so on. So, and you can see the rates per hour that they charge there. Some of them going up to 1,295 per hour, 1,520 per hour, project manager, and that's really the see that we have done this comparison, and we would really want to ensure that the SIU rates are competitive, although as we're now going to do the review, I really go into this review now with an assumption that we're going to find that we are undercharging, so to speak. But we would like to make sure that we don't overcharge. We are reasonable in our charges. So, Honourable Chair, that was really to demonstrate that our fees are not overly expensive. In fact, we compare reasonably less with the market. I'm going to pause here, and then my colleague can probably take the committee through the challenges and risks, but it's important to note that these risks, we do put in place measures to ensure that they are mitigated. These are really just to say, if this risk is not mitigated, it's likely to cause issues. But as we speak now, the risks are well mitigated.
Thanks, Advocate. In terms of the risk and challenge, the first one is possible lack of cooperation from relevant official. Here, Chair, we are utilizing our powers. As you know, when there's lack of cooperation, we do utilize our power. Second one, possible destruction or loss of relevant documents. Here, we are in a position to conduct search and seizure, and we are able to freeze the laptops and able loss of memories by affected officials. Here we'll identify additional witnesses that can assist with the information or to give more relevant information pertaining to whatever information, utilizing the witness protection unit. If there's any witnesses that feel that they are intimidated, there are measures in place to make sure that we protect them. Whether the defendants will be able to pay, some of the students are not working, and you might find that they've applied for this bursary illegally, but you find that we won't take the fact that I'm not working. We're able to conduct the lifestyle analysis so that we can see the expenditure of the person, whether he's in a position to pay back the money or not. So we're not going to leave it that you are a student, you are unemployed, you are unable to pay now. So there are measures that we'll put in place to make sure that if there's any form of income, you are able to pay back the money. Prescription of claims, if volatile climate in respect of students at higher learning institution, here we saw it as a risk, particularly when we started the investigation. As we know that normally January, February, it's a volatile environment with our interviews or consultation off-site. We don't do it in campus where the situation might be volatile. And also we just assess them as weeks on them. Thank you.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. That brings us to the end of the update on the investigations at the department, particularly NSFAS. We will pause here, Chair.
The advocate for the presentation and your team. Would go to the department, the DG, on the same institution in terms of your own presentation, while the issues that are pertinent, which lie in the same level in terms of this kind of investigation. We give over to you. Well, before that, I think let me the airport in Cape Town, and because of the weather, that's the current situation up until further notice. Over to DG.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity. I take this opportunity to recognize the presentation by the SIU and thank them for addressing some of the issues that are really key to unlocking whatever blockages and difficulties that we may have experienced, particularly as a very large institution with a footprint in higher education that involve 26 public universities, FET colleges, 50 colleges, and 9 community education and training institutions, excluding CETAs. So investigations has always been our issue. In fact, the only issue in the past. And I think the presentation here on the business that is applied throughout the length and breadth of the institutions we are responsible for. Our presentation today, Chairperson, directly respond, to the issues that have been raised as per the requests, and it covers 3 areas. One, it's internal investigations since the 22nd, 23rd financial year, and give the committee work that is being done, and we categorize this work to include the number of students that are affected, to give a sense that as an institution on an ongoing basis we are in pursuit them accountable for these areas, and our report will provide the detail in this regard. Secondly, Chair, the report is going to cover the external investigations, which is the Auditor General's, the latest regarding the audit processes at NSFAS, as well as the SIU investigation. In this regard, therefore, Chairperson, with your permission, allow me to hand over to the Chair of the NSFAS Board, Mr. Ernest Kosa, and the CEO to present in this regard. Thank you.
The Director General of the department and the DDGs, present here the CEO, management of NSFAS, Advocate Mutibi, to be part of the proceedings this morning. We're very grateful to be here, taking this to the committee. The SIU has been very transparent to us from the very beginning, transparent on the investigation journey. We're very grateful for that. They met management. The Western Cape team, Advocate Mutibi, met me as well. They were very transparent. We met you as well, Advocate, at your offices, and thank you so much for the transparency on the investigation team. It's only natural that we'll be concerned about the costs, but we're very pleased that in the presentation this morning it was made clear that that's a ballpark figure. It's possible it could be less than that. At which we've been very vocal, Chair, from the very beginning on our support of this initiative. It can only help us execute our mandate better. In particular, I am very pleased, and I believe that's the posture of our shareholder and our colleagues with the report that we got this morning, which was spot on in many cases. Their emphasis on the closeout reports, their identification of fraudulent beneficiaries. Even more encouraging is the fact that even though the investigation is at its early stages, the SIU has been able to identify some problems which are threatening the security of the sector as a whole, which is the mafias in our student accommodation. And this does not only disadvantage us and leading to financial losses, but it's also, and I know that the CEO doesn't want me to say this, we saw threatening SMSs directed at the CEO of NSFAS by people who are worried about our new accommodation policies, which are going to affect the way they've been conducting business. So we're very, very elated at the way in which the SIU is spot on these issues. I'll now, Chair, with your permission, hand over to the CEO.
Chair. Good morning to the Honourable Chair, to the Honourable members, DG, the Chair of the Board, and all the colleagues, the Head of SIU, and all the colleagues from the department. Chair, I'll just try and go at a high level on the presentation that we have prepared. That we had prepared. Thank you, Chair. Chair, just in terms of the matters that we are reported, so maybe I should start off by saying that we do have a fraud hotline at NSFAS where matters of wrongdoing are reported. So we have received about 37 cases in the financial year under review. Majority of the cases that we received, Chair, pertain to the matter that mostly was referred to by the SIU, where there's undue funding of students. So you would find that from next door is getting funding when they should not have been getting funding. So these are some of the cases that we are receiving. You would also get instances where some students are trying to defraud other students of their own pertain from issues of supply chain that relate to the years 2018 that we are investigating. And also there are some instances where institutions have submitted to us undue registration information of students, similar again to a case that has been reported by the ACF that we are investigating some wrongdoing. Chair, in terms of the status, Chair, 14 of these matters were finalized, 7 of these matters are in progress. We had not yet started about 16 matters. This is mainly due to capacity constraints that we are facing in the organization. But I think, Chair, this, without necessarily deferring or referring some of the cases, then would be investigated by them. So we would not necessarily want to duplicate effort in that sense. Chair, I think I did summarize the nature of the cases, but so I'll skip this slide. Chair, in terms of where we are, I think the only thing to say here with the status of the SIU investigation is that as the organization NSFAS, we are fully committed to cooperating with the SIU. We have cooperated. We are continuing to engage with them. Incidentally, even tomorrow, we have a session scheduled with them where we'll be discussing various other matters. So I think there we are cooperating. We have not at least received any indication that there isn't any cooperation. Of course, Chair, in the course of the investigation, there are certain matters that, for example, if we look at the closeout report, we are also busy, one that we are doing and one that the SIU has received. Also, I think I've seen that in the presentation this morning in relation to the amounts of unduly funded students. We have an amount, but it's slightly different to that of the SIU, so we will be engaging to understand how they got to the amount and what is missing in ours. So I think we are continuing to engage with the colleagues, Chair. In terms of the internal audit status, Chair, we, in fact, of all our audit, I should indicate that since the administration, Chair, as we've reported here before, and making sure that we have look at some of these matters. In fact, some of the matters as recommended by the SIU, these are matters that our team already looks at. We also have, as indicated, Chair, that we have an internal audit, a forensic department that does investigate as these matters as they are being reported to us. Chair, in terms of the status of implementation of audit recommendations, these would be recommendations, Chair, that pertain to the 2021-2022 period. We had received about 39 audit findings from the AG. How we close our recommendations is that's why they're all sitting in the status of remediation in progress. It's once management has conducted and performed or implemented the recommendation, it then is taken through to internal audit by internal audit. And then, Chair, just to indicate again that I think this is a repeat slide, that many of the issues that were raised pertain to areas that were in the closeout project that we are busy with, but also that of these have also been taken to internal audit to review. Chair, I think the status, maybe we should just indicate the status of the previous audit, that is the audit of 2021 annual report, Chair, closeout project that has been ongoing. The revised set of accounts having taken into account the closeout information. Initially, we had done the closeout from 2017 to 2020 when we were preparing for the financial statements. At the time when we were submitting the financial statements at the end of May last year, the closeout project had not yet been at a stage where we could report those numbers to the AGS. Was granted. We have then submitted the financial statements as agreed to the AG by the 31st of March this year. The expectation is that the AG will issue a report at the end of June in relation to that audit. At the same time, Chair, we are commencing with the current audit process. Chair, that would be it.
That's the report. DG, do you have anything to say?
Just one or two comments. The funding for students from disadvantaged communities and working class in both universities and TVET colleges have increased from 21 billion in 2018 to 8.6 billion in 2021, and currently sitting at 47 billion. Whereas, Chairperson, the total number of students funded in universities and colleges increased from 586,000 in 2018 to 770 in 2021. Currently, we've exceeded one, and that means, therefore, Chairperson, that about 80% of the students that are in our universities are actually funded exclusively by NSFAS, and that ensures that access to higher education is achieved. The Constitution provides for compulsory basic education, but when it comes to further education and training, the Constitution says it shall be made progressively available as the state develop the capacity to do so. And therefore, it is important for us to look at the resources that are allocated to us, ensure in efficient use of those resources. And instruments of government like SIU, the Hawks, and other state law enforcement agencies are very important to us, because continue to increase to make accessible the opportunities for learning in this regard. And therefore, the presentations made today are important. Having said that, Chairperson, we have a role to ensure that our entities are fully accountable. And we insist that compliance with Auditor General is very important. And we are happy that as it has been requested, by the end of the financial year, NSFAS needed to submit fully its audited financial statements, so that it allows the AG to make a call about the governance related matters. We are looking forward to the report of the Auditor General, and at that point, that established the Department of Higher Education and Training. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, DG and your team, the Chair of the Board, NSFAS, and the CEO for the presentation, which is inclusive of the area presentation made. The Office of the Auditor General is represented here when through discussions, if there's any matter that relates to the office providing some kind of responsibility probably make that reference to the office. But for now, I'll refer to my colleagues. Here are the presentations. Raise your hands for your contribution, whether questions or some comments on the report. I see Honorable Lias and Honorable Pose and Honorable Suera and Honorable Bucas. In that order. Honorable Lias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning to everyone, and thank you for the presentations, as frightening as they may be, but important that we know what's going on. Mr. Chairman, I've got a number of questions to various people. So are you wanting me to put them all, or can I put them, get answers, put them in a hearing style?
And as far as the other one would be on National Skills Fund. Because of time, I would urge members just to put a few questions for response. Probably if you could cluster them.
I'll do my best, Mr. Chairman. There's so much involved here.
Yeah.
Let me just speak to SIU Advocate Matibi. The work you do is very, very important and must not be downplayed. However, the funding that's been recovered of 38 million, am I correct in recovered from the 40,000 odd students who should not have been paid? Given that I think your answer will be yes, that is the case, what are the possibilities of recovering any significant amount of that 5.7 billion? I think it's 5.7 billion, 5 point something billion, from the students themselves. You've indicated quite rightly that it's a mammoth task. And we're looking at spending 70 million rand, and what I'm trying to get at is how much are we going to recover? How many would a non-recovery result in assets, not forfeiture, but taking over assets? In other words, if students have any kind of motor car or something like that, would we go to the point of taking their cars or their TVs or whatever away from them? But that leads me to the next question, is I don't know how far your investigation's got because it's very early, but I assume that there is some of the criminality involved or fraud involved with some of these students. And so is your mandate then to put those people in jail or to direct the information to the right authorities who would then charge? I know you don't actually do that. I hope that is someone crying and not laughing, because this is a crying matter, not a laughing matter. This is a happy committee most of the time. We get cross sometimes with people who've got namhlanje nangeke sikthetis. Ayiki fine namhlanje. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Advocates, yeah. So there's a criminality. Would we land up eventually with some of the 40,000 at least, perhaps being involved in criminality, fraud, being charged and face those consequences? Because the other question about the recovery rate, and you've raised it, is the prescription. We know that the system that NSFAS has in place is just shocking, and I'll get there in a minute. Any of the students have been sent any accounts to say they owe the money. And if they haven't been sent an account, within 3 years, it's prescribed, as I understand the law, but I'm a layman, so maybe you can explain that to me. So your suggestion of going back to 2013, I would only support that if there's a possibility of putting people in jail. Because the recovery of money, I think, is very, very limited. But I would love to hear your opinion on that. The question of your fees, you've put it here in front of us today, Advocate, and I've already said you do an important job, so please don't. And so if an increase in fee structure is required in order to cover bad debts, I won't be supporting it. So I'd love to know from you what your debtors book looks. An age analysis could be sent to us so that we can also follow up with your clients, which happen to be people who are supposed to answer to Parliament as well. In terms of NSFAS itself, I think it's fairly clear, and has been fairly clear for a while, that the system has failed horribly. But one of the major system failures seems to be the payment and the control there being the family income, 350,000 letter not being submitted. If I were a student now in 2023, would I have been able to get money out of NSFAS without presenting that letter? Have you put a system in place just to block that one problem in your hugely faulty system? I mean, surely that's an easy little quick solution, because it seems to be one of the major issues here in your system. So is that being blocked, or is it still going on? Are students still able to access funding without providing proof of the 350,000 rand limit? Mr. Chairman, the NSFAS system, I am a bookkeeper by profession, and I just go cold when I hear all these issues. I'd love to have a briefing on exactly how the system works, point by point, how it's going to be, how it has been fixed. I think we keep talking about what we're going to do and not what we have done, because this is not a new subject. And why we actually pay through institutions at all. We have a grant system paying out 17 million odd people every month. But we use third parties as a channel, but we don't actually give the banks. I shouldn't have used First National Bank. I'll be accused of promoting a particular bank, which happens to be mine. That's why it came to mind, for no other reason. I apologize to other bank CEOs for not mentioning their banks. But the point is that we don't use those institutions to determine who should and who shouldn't get. And I don't really understand how that works with NSFAS. So, Mr. Chairman, my last point is, and I'm sorry I'm going on, it's a very big subject, is the annual report. CEO, you indicate that you got an extension from the AG. Well, actually, the only extension you can get, in fact, you can't get an extension. There's no provision in the law to get an extension. The Minister, DG, has to write to Parliament to inform Parliament that the annual report is going to be late. There's a what's the word in law? There's a gap in the law, which then allows the institution, the department, to go on forever before it actually produces the annual report. So my question is, was that letter written by the Minister to the Parliament, and have we got it, Mr. Chairman? I may well have received it and not seen and not registered it, but I hope it was done. But the AG has no authority to give extensions, none at all. The deadline is a deadline in law, and if that deadline is not going to be met, there is a provision in the law, as poorly drafted as it is, for the Minister to report such to Parliament. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable, yes, that the two framed cluster of questions, some to SIU and some to NSFAS. So in terms of response, we should somewhat allow to get into that format. Before I get to you, Honourable Boss.
No, thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Liz, thank you for the questions. In terms of recovery, the money that has been recovered to date, that has been projected on the presentation, was recovered from an institution, not from students. That being the answer, the question was, what are the possibilities of recovering from students? That is, if the investigation and evidence points to any wrongdoing on the part of the students that would have caused any loss of NSFAS. In terms of the law, when we have determined that the SIU is duty bound to institute, probably be guessing or estimating at the moment. So, Honourable Chair and Honourable Liz, as my colleague indicated earlier on, when we reach that stage, we will do an assessment on the method of the recovery. You only recover, as you said, where there are assets or money and so on. So if the assessment points to us that there's no asset or money to recover from student X, we will make that determination at the time. But of course, there's further areas that we could look at in terms of the recovery methods. So I would really not want to just speculate. I think that's the term. But in the process of and indicate at the time whether it is not working and all of that, and then we will indicate to the committee when we get to that point. Would you recover assets from students? I think I've covered that. If the analysis indicates that a particular student owns assets and so on, and we are able to ensure that from an analysis that fact is determined, we will definitely look at that. And criminality on the part of the students, if evidence points that there is criminality on the part of any student, we will, of course, put together that evidence, and as required by the law, refer that evidence to the National Prosecuting Authority, and of course they will take it forward in accordance with the legislation applicable to them. Prescription, I'm really thankful that you raised that. Prescription is a legal concept which gets inquired based on the legal rules regulating prescription. And the lawyers in the team are aware of that, and that is why we have raised it. There are legal rules in terms of which at what stage do you determine when the debt runs and at what point does it prescribe. Honourable Liz, you indicated some of the factors that are taken into account, at what point we became aware and all of that, but there are further legal tests. Did indicate in the presentation that In other instances, we will then refer matters to the asset forfeiture unit. If the issue relates to criminal action, then prescription doesn't apply. So if it relates to civil recovery, yes, we will be faced with that kind of an inquiry to make and determine whether there's description or not. It indicates that we have determined, Honourable Chair, that there's quite a number of matters that relates to the scope that is not covered by the current proclamation dating back to 2013, and we are indeed considering on extending that scope. If there is an increase and possibly increasing them with a view to covering bad debt, we're definitely not doing that, Honourable Liz. It would really be, that's simply because we have not really reviewed our rates in the past 9 years. So the team, the finance team and the investigating team, that is not to increase. We might well leave them as they are. But we will really apply prudence and consideration as we look at the need or otherwise to increase or not to increase. The level of debt, that is, and I think that's a very accurate observation, Honourable Liz, we have realized over time, although the model says we charge fees, but there's quite a number of state institutions that are not paying. Provide the Honourable Committee with a breakdown of the debt and indicate state institutions that have not paid and the age analysis thereof. In fact, yesterday, at a management meeting we had, the debt stands at more than 1 billion at the moment. So it is really an indication that there might really be a need, and we have said that to this rate, if we are to proceed at this rate, and at the moment, while we are still financially stable as a special investigating unit, and we really apply prudence in our financial management, if this debt is allowed to escalate the way that it's escalating, it is likely down the line that it's going to affect the operations of the special investigating unit. So, Honourable Chair and Honourable Liz and Honourable Members, we will provide a breakdown. We are hoping that as we engage further on, that the funding model could possibly be reviewed going forward, so that realized, amongst others, that as we investigate, more often some of the outcomes supported by evidence points to some of the officials in the organization, in the state institutions, and we then realize that that may or may not be really be affecting, the payment or not payment. So we find ourselves in this situation, Honourable Chair, where we have to follow up and follow up and follow up with state institutions, but the payments are not coming through. We will provide that breakdown to the Honourable Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Hopefully, the Honourable Yes has been responded to in the part of the SIU, but that a few questions which relate to NSFAS for their response, specifically NSFAS. I'll ask NSFAS, DJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was one on the Minister, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honourable Liz, for those questions. So, Chair, indeed, from a systems perspective, we have improved our systems. Many of the instances that were referred to by the SIU that we are seeing of undue funding, it's at the time where our systems were not linked with the Department of Home Affairs. The importance of linking it with the Department of Home Affairs, firstly, we confirm that the applicant is who they say they are. Secondly, we then confirm the parents of the applicant, because we use parental information to assess financial eligibility. So indeed, Honourables, there could be underlying weaknesses that are within the Home Affairs database. For example, we know that many kids, when they are registered, they are mainly registered with mother's information, and there's no father. So in that case, we would not be able to pick the full household information, but to the extent that both parents are registered, then we are able to assess who the parents are. Then secondly, what we do then is we are working with, we then confirm income through the SARS database. There are limitations with the SARS database. Firstly, it's that the exchange between us and SARS is not real time in terms of the sharing of information. But at the same time, we also rely on the previous tax year's information to be able to assess whether or not there's eligibility. Where a student then, where we cannot find the parent on the SARS database, again, there are limitations there that not everybody is registered for tax or pays for tax. We then look at the credit bureau to assess whether a parent, we can get a sense of parental information in the credit bureau. But also with the credit bureau, there are limitations in this. Those are the improvements that are currently in the system. We've put in place in our system, thanks to the funding we got from the department to improve our systems, and that process of improving our systems is ongoing. But certainly, when we've assessed for 2020, 2023 and the years before, we have been using this data. Of course, it's got some limitations to it. The other source we use is also the SASSA database. We are linked to the SASSA database. Where an applicant is a SASSA beneficiary, they are automatically funded to be within NSFAS. Then again, there would be a limitation there where somebody has tried to access SASSA fraudulently because we are relying on the database from SASSA. So in essence, there are those improvements that we've made, Chair, but they are not necessarily foolproof given some of the limitations that I've indicated. So in a way, Chair, I also try to answer the second question by showing what we use from a systems perspective to get to making a funding decision. Then maybe pertinent to the second question is, why were we using, in this case, institutions to make payments to students? It was mainly historical, Chair, in the sense that we would recall that the scheme at some point was decentralized, where institutions were the ones who were assessing whether or not students were eligible, and then ultimately paying students. So we also because of capacity constraints also in the organization, we were not able to take over that function. But what we've done this year in the guidelines, we've indicated our intent that we are going to be taking over this function and paying directly. We are using the banking system to be able to do that, but we will then be assessing. Even now, when institutions were paying, it will still be NSFAS that assesses, based on the registration information, that this student ought to receive this much kind of allowance, and then you then pass that to institutions to pay. But now we are going to be taking away that call it third party that does the actual payment. Thank you, Chair. The last question was for the DG. Yes.
Chairperson, the question is whether the Minister did report to Parliament regarding delays in the submission of financial statements by NSFAS. And the answer is yes, Chairperson, the Minister did. In the letter dated the 29th of September 2022, the Minister also further updated the National Council of Provinces regarding the status of the audit of NSFAS. The second letter the Minister wrote on the 15th of December was directed to Honourable Nosiviwe Mapisa Mabula, the Speaker of the National Assembly, on the 29th, firstly, but also later in December, an update in this regard. Thank you, Chair.
General should take note of what is hanging on the allowance made in terms of the finalization and the tabling of the annual report. And as far as the audit sign-off and finalization by the Office of the Auditor General. Just take note of that. Just give to members these other items. Honourable reports.
It's Paulson, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson. And Chairperson. So I have three questions to the SIU and one to the NSFAS. So I'd like to know from the SIU, from their preliminary investigations, whether the students that were awarded NSFAS funding erroneously, let's put it that way, in error, did they willfully mislead? How much of the those NSFAS awards are as a result of a NSFAS employee colluding with the applicant? If there's that information is available yet. This is from the preliminary investigations, of course. The advocate also stated that it will take 18 months to complete the investigation, and you're going to investigate each of the 40,044 students who were erroneously awarded funding. So, how much of those students make up that preliminary investigation that you reported on? And you're going to take 18 months to complete this investigation. So I'd like an indication as to how many you've completed since you started. And you have about 12 months left. If you're going to complete the balance of that 40,044 students. And I'd also like to know from the SIU, the last question, of those that were part of your preliminary investigation, how many of them are from the missing middle? You know, those ones that they don't qualify for NSFAS. And they also can't afford to go. The parents can't afford to pay for them to go to university. Okay. How many of them are there? Because I can tell you, if my parents, I would be in trouble. So, okay. Are we at a stage where NSFAS can ensure that applicants' application for NSFAS funding, should they pursue tertiary education? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Questions for yourself, and then we get into NSFAS.
Thank you, Chair. As the investigation is ongoing, I'm going to allow my colleague to just indicate to the Honourable Committee whether there are those instances of students who willfully misled. If they did so, of course, they would fall under the category of fraud committing to determine that. But whether there are any instances up to now, I'm going to just hand over to my there's collusion between students and employees and so on. So we did mention that we are focusing also on determining whether there's collusion. But whether there's evidence already pointing to those, my colleague will indicate.
Thanks, Advocate, and thank you, Chair. Honourable Member, we don't have the number for now, but in terms of willfully misled, there are some categories that we have identified whereby In some instances, it's the student who obtaining information from their grandparents or the uncle that is not getting enough money. And in some instances, some role to play because they submit the list to NSFAS. And only to find that some of the students are not at the institution anymore, or they've dropped out. So that's a different category that we have found out of this. So the investigation currently is ongoing. We have identified some of them where we are obtaining the application form to see who signed, who completed the application form, so that they can be able to see the liability as to who misled at that particular time. Some come out and say, of course, we did apply. I mean, the bursary was available, so we had to apply. So we will be dealing with them differently on that aspect. These funds is administered at the institution level, where some of the officials at the institution, some they collude with the student, and we have seen much of this collusion, particularly on the issue of accommodation, where they collude with the outside accommodation provider to make sure that they inflate some of the accommodation that the students they stayed on. So there's obviously the student will not work on their own. There are some enablers within the system that are enabling them to able to access some of this fund. And on the issue of the 40,000, in the sense that we are utilizing several data base so that we run the data and then able to identify, summarize their list. The other provinces have prioritized their list. So we're trying to deal with it in such a way that we can able to find data easily and eliminate some of the instances where there won't be need for us to be able to go and see the applicant. And also the application form, the information provided, enable us to be able to see whether indeed the student did qualify or not. In that way, it enables us to eliminate some of the members that we really don't necessarily need to see. Thank you.
No, thank you, Honourable Chair. Just running the data, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. We do have, as my colleague indicated, we do have investigative tools that assist us to run the data at a reasonable speed, and the system is able to indicate instantly the outliers that the teams can now follow with investigations. But the system is able to flag when the rules are set up in the system to support a specific outcome of an investigation. It's able to indicate outliers and flag, and thereby assist in ensuring that we either shorten or meet the deadline of the investigations. With regard to the missing middle, we haven't really done that assessment. Yes, I'm sure the CEO could assist on that, but if there's a need for us to assist with that, we can probably also offer our assistance. Thanks.
NSFAS?
Sorry, I just missed out on one question that I just want to pose to the CEO of NSFAS. If I may.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like you to take us into confidence about the accommodation mafia and threats made on the life of the CEO and what action has been taken to deal with the matter. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Over to you, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on the first question that an honourable person asked, are we at a stage where social grants recipients can get funding easy? I'm only paraphrasing. Yes, Chair, we are there. SASA applicants, as I indicated, we as soon as they apply and go through the application process, they get what we call a real-time funding system. So as soon as they press submit in the application, because we do need the application information, they are automatically, I'm saying automatically funded, but they get the response immediately that they would be funded. Just out of interest, over 70% of our beneficiaries are actually SASSA beneficiaries that we have. Chair, in relation to the SMSs that I got, we referred these to, we had a team that is busy doing a security assessment, so they are busy investigating those threats. Chair, thank you.
Okay. He asked a direct question. That question was direct in terms of the threats that have been, such as it goes even beyond the actual yes or no. What is it? It's what to know as to how further does that go. And I'm sure it's something that we need to think about as an institution. Because not necessarily refer to yourself in terms of your threat analysis and all that stuff. The board has responsibility to deal with those kinds of issues. But it's a critical question, which was referred to the institution. Can we allow the next? Honorable CY?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the colleagues. I have got two questions. I hope I'm audible naturally and my voice is low. It's better. Thank you, Chair. Not necessarily be able to give you what I'm going to ask or request. So you say your time frame is 18 months. I'm trying to build a sequence so that you can understand. And I'm looking at the numbers which you say individually you should be able to follow. My first question would be, do you think you will be able to finish within the time allocated? The second one, which I'm linking to that, is that I am more interested in some form of a numerical quantification of, so far we've spent this amount of money to recover this amount of rent. That will assist us to be able to track the expenditure vis-a-vis the output. I'll make it a simple example for you. So next time when you come with a presentation, some form of a graph, I'll give you an example that somebody would say, people don't pay for the total. The money which you want to spend on following 5 rand vis-a-vis the logistics, where I hired a law firm to go and follow 100 rand while you are spending millions to hire a law firm. You might not be able to sort of like create that graph. That would assist us so that we can know whether at the rate and pace that you're going, or we're going to see the outcome. It would be a sad situation where you find that in the financial constraints that you're complaining about and you're expressing about, you have a problem that actually we spend millions only to chase a drop in the ocean. So maybe in relation to the issue of capacity which you have raised. And I want to suggest to you that I did not hear you fully in the presentation saying we've got a plan which we think will start at this particular time. It would appear that for some time you have internally acknowledged that we have got a problem of building internal capacity, and I'm glad, advocate, when we were speaking about it, you vividly said that, and when you outsource, it's costly. That let's work towards building that internal capacity, unlike acknowledging it and speaking more about it, and not some sense of saying, but we think in the next financial year we want to, either we are restructuring the organogram of the institution so that we can start addressing it, this is how we think we'll limit it, and also involve treasury in the process. That will assist that we're not sure the amount you're spending vis-a-vis the actually intended outcome. And in relation to, it's just only on. So numerically you have not started. That's so. The number of those that you have not started is higher than any other. And you are just saying mainly due to human resource constraints that have been happening, you have been experiencing for 3 years. Would I be wrong to assume that from the first year you saw this problem, you carried it over to the next year and to the next year? What are the intentions to solve these financial constraints and the human resource constraints so that the number can reduce? I'm afraid that I want to play devil's advocate unless you're going to do a quick job. So I'm afraid we might change the next financial to 16 because it is high. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. SIU and NSFAS.
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member. The time frame, it's 18 months as determined by the project plan put together by the investigating team. We'll continue to monitor that with the view that we meet the deadline. In terms of the spend so far, I just checked with my colleague quickly whether we have sent any invoice to the institution. In the invoice, there's a supporting documentation that goes with the invoice that indicates the breakdown of what has been achieved to date, so that the institution could see what is it that it's paying for vis-a-vis the outcomes that we have reached. We are mindful more to recover less. We are mindful about that, so that, and a question was raised earlier by Honourable Lees, at what point do we really determine whether we're going to have any recoveries or not? At the stage when we reach that, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, that there's a clear indication that there's not going to be any recoveries from anyone, we will then make that determination at that time. But I think the issue here is that the economic principle that you shouldn't spend more and recover less, we're quite aware of that. In fact, to date, I think we've recovered more than half of the costs that we intend to spend or intend to charge. We, at the rate that we are going, because we have indicated about 76 institutions involved, it might be, I'm just really saying, that there may be similar scenarios of the one where we've discovered, where we've recovered, or the money was paid back, and we believe that that money was paid as a result of the efforts that were made by the Special Investigating Unit. It might be that there might be similar scenarios where we'll then probably at the next hearing show that we have recovered more. So Honourable Chair and Honourable Member, we do take that into account, and we will ensure that we don't reach that stage where the state institution would be required to pay more and we don't recover. We will ensure that we monitor that space. In terms of the capacity, this is more human resources capacity, and thanks for that question. We have indeed realized that to outsource to the SIU as we speak is capacitated. We don't have private companies in this investigation in particular. They are not employed in the organization, and I'm not saying they probably arise here or not, but if we require specialist skills to assess a particular area of investigation, in an unlikely event that we have that here, then we will probably not have those specialists. But should we need a specialist that we don't ordinarily employ, we will then, of course, go out into the market to seek that specialist. But as we speak, and just to the honourable member's comment, we've come a while with the SIU restructuring, probably around 6-7 years ago, and we've been capacitating in line with the organogram or the organizational structure that we have determined. So the capacitation is going on to date. So with the objective of reducing outsourcing to private companies. Thank you.
I think in terms of the first question, advocate, is more on the line when you have answered it. But the emphasis was that in terms of the presentation, if you would make such an economic outline, we should assist to know how far you are going in terms of balancing costs to the recoveries in terms of such a cost in a way. So when I 71 million and some odd in terms of your forecast, it's about R1.28. It's 174 rand 80 cents per student. Just a rough thing without looking into other variables. 174 rand 80 cents. If you look into the 70 million against the 40,000 students and odd. So roughly it gets into that in terms of your actual charge. But there are other variables which you could probably be looking into, which could scale things even differently. As to whether that is fine or not fine, it's an order that we need to somewhat engage in. But if you look into the ball game, in terms of the ball in relation to the total charge, it looks exorbitant. But if you get into the detail around that kind of a charge, something which we must get into the future, I think it will assist going therefore. I think that's the question which she has been asking for in terms of the presentation. NSFAS.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in terms of the capacitation, I think indeed, Chair, we from the point of administration, we had frozen, just for lack of a better word, new appointments, except to focus on really what were critical vacancies at the time, whilst we were waiting for the new board to review the organizational structure. That has since been done. What we are busy now, Chair, we have prioritized the appointment of those vacancies, particularly in internal audit and in the forensics department. So those are in the process of recruitment. Also, Chair, we follow what we call a cost-sourcing model. Again, we've also, just because of capacity, budgetary constraints, have not been able to activate the assistance of external service providers. What has since changed, Chair, from a budget perspective, is that we applied to the department to use the money. So typically the money we get on recoveries, we are supposed to use strictly for student funding, but we've requested that we will be allowed to use a percentage of that towards our administration. So this is what has enabled us to be able to unlock some of this budget to be able to increase our capacity. So in essence, Chair, we in the next, because the recruitment process has started, the positions were advertised, they're in the process of being interviewed. And also because of the structure, the review of the structure, we've also done what we say internal placements. There are resources that have been also placed currently to increase the capacity within the forensics unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much on the questions. which you have answered both the SIU and NSFAS.
NSFAS and SIU for the presentations. And to the SIU, we acknowledge the progress in the investigations for the past 6 months. Chair, as much as we have concerns about the money paid for investigations, we need to follow up on state resources not reaching our poor and disadvantaged people. In ESCOPA, we also have a duty to look after the resources of the state. And I specifically speak about that concern about the 70 million. To the SIU, in your opinion, how is the cooperation with the NSFAS, firstly? And I see that some of the risks identified memory by affected officials. That one, is it based on a professional opinion, or what is this loss of memory? And how regular are your engagements with them? Then secondly, Chair, what is the current status of monitoring measures to develop security systems based on your recommendations as the SIU to prevent that this is not happening again whilst you are busy with the investigation? Some of my colleagues ask about the plus minus 40,000 students who did not qualify but they get the money. Your investigations, will you be able to discover if it is indeed the student who applied for the money? Because I was listening to the response on the very difficult exercise to identify that it is indeed those students who and what will the effect be on the moral of the my question to NSFAS is that I think Honorable Tembi asked it also, but in the words of the chairperson, he was saying that it's natural to be concerned about the cost of money paid for investigation. In the response of the CEO, he said that there is appointments now. I'm trying to understand why frozen in the time frame that you appoint the service providers. And then when did you install the hotline, and how effective is that hotline? I'm trying to understand, because for me, the example that my neighbor received money, I don't think it's effective enough, because the problem is not on the outside. The problem now within NSFAS. Thank you, Chair.
Hotline has been in place. Chair, it has been a hotline that was in place even prior to administration, where people are able to report any matters of fraudulent activity. And we are also effective where we then respond to those matters that have been reported, Chair. Chair, from the point of using of service providers, I should firstly indicate, Chair, that the last time we use service providers to investigate some of these cases, it does, Chair, from time to time become necessary for us to do so, given the technical nature of some of the matters that we have to deal with. However, since that time, we've endeavored to use internal panel, Chair, as and when we want to be able to bolster our capacity, and depending on the amount of work that we have to do, then we are able to tap into that resource. Chair, from a cost perspective, of course, in the short term, and where you have an internal resource, you need to make sure that you have enough budget to cover that resource for the duration of their employment. So that's normally what we balance, but just as consultants for investigations since 2019, even then we're dealing with some of the technical matters during administration. Chair, indeed, the issues were, and I've accessed this undue funding, it's because at the time, we had no systems to verify the parental information. We had no systems to verify. We have these third-party systems that we rely on. Of course, it's not without its own weaknesses, given that we rely.
NSFAS, you see some of the questions which are asked while they are looking into pertinent matters, they are futuristic as well. So when we consider such questions, they reflect in the systemic instance as to what is it that need to be looked into going forward. Because when we deal with these matters, protect ourselves, because the question has been asked, you see, around this matter. But the interest is more than that. You are involved in a social related function. You offer that function for education, and is growing, and the creeping elements of risk are as well improving. Well, they compete with that kind of interest. So the level of your functionality within that kind of a situation need agility. So when we probe through these questions, let's probably give ourselves that notion that our interest is not to get you into a corner, but it's to get you through such inquisitive mind for innovation, improvements out there, so that things should happen to improve the will of operational capability. So I would really want to urge ourselves to focus around that, because if you look at those questions, they are somewhat like that, getting out there. And as far as SIU?
No, thank you, Honourable Chair and Honourable Biekas. The cooperation by NSFAS, and I would also say the department, it's really excellent. NSFAS, as the chair of the board, Mr. Koza has indicated, we have had interaction with the institution. The CEO has been quite helpful. The team on an ongoing basis engages with the institution, so there are no issues there. And if there were, the team would probably have indicated to me, and I would have indicated to the CEO and the DG, and those would be resolved. Really not to be mentioned at this stage. Loss of memory, Honourable Biekas, I think there, on the risk analysis that was done by the team, usually it really also indicates to the length of time it takes that you will find that witnesses don't have a sort of a clear recollection of the matters at hand, but that's how it is with potential witnesses. They would, of course, engage them with the view that, as we complete and the speed at which we investigate would mitigate the loss of memory. It's really called loss of memory, but in a sense, it means that witnesses cannot really remember and so on. It's not pathological. Monitoring measures in the institution. We have really picked up in the presentation by the DG and the CEO that most of the issues that we have indicated in our systemic recommendations and the observations already are receiving attention, and we are really pleased. How do we ensure that from an investigation perspective, and I'm understanding the question, Honourable Chair and Honourable Biekas, to say, how do we ensure that the evidence points to the relevant student findings against a wrong student, in which case it will affect the student consent. So the investigation is conducted such that there is an analysis process and to determine which students have been paid, the basis thereof, and so on, just to ensure that when findings are made that this has been irregularly or unduly paid, we point to the correct student. It's really critical that we do so to avoid intended consequences. I'll indicate high level on how we
440 units of NSFAS. They supplied us with the information as they did a comparison analysis in terms of comparing SARS data to students that have been funded. Those students that are above the threshold, that's just purely one of the examples. Those are the students that they've given that information to us so that we can go and follow up. And then obviously our rationale of how we're going to approach these 40 students. So these 40 practically obtaining the application forms, the information that was supplied to NSFAS, that they are below the threshold and all of the regulations that they have to adhere to. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Advocate and your team NSFAS, the Chair of the Board, the DGCU, of the presentation by SIU. It deals with potential systemic recommendations of the system. And therefore, if nothing is done in terms of those systems, perpetually, we are going to get into the similar perpetual, should incrementally look into the application around those system failures and ensure that the recommendations which have been made, because taking into consideration that the SIU is still in the process of making those investigations. So the next question by us, when you come around, would be how far your plan. You see, so some kind of a plan should be undertaken to deal with these and cuts deeper. You see, I watched the minister trying to explain how they make approvals for IDs, for passports, during this recent saga, which has been that purpose. The state had an outlook that there is an institution called CETA, which is responsible to provide capacity. And if that institution is not assisting government overall, those system failures are going to continue over time. So it might be necessary that at some stage would help on how they begin to assist various departments to fulfill their own functioning based on e-governance and how they infrastructure such processes. And what we see with NSFAS is exactly what falls into their own laps around those Member Paulson has asked, which is the policy matter around the missing middle. So the investigations would deal with these other matters, but they somewhat infuse into our own policy directive. If you're going to save an amount of about 5 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion, this amount is unaccounted for, is lost, or what have you. And you'll find out that those who are the players there, their interest is in education. And they commit such illegal acts for the end benefit, which is education. What does that say into the policy instruments that we have to begin to think about in our service to serve them in a way, so to fulfill what is the discrimination in as far as looking into such an outlook. So it ought to permeate our policy environment to deal with those matters, DG. How is our policy accommodative so that you should be on your risk-averse environment, begin to deal with those things in terms of the policy. The last thing, I think Honorable Lisa has dealt with this question. If indeed there is a huge risk in as far as accommodation is concerned, even there ought to be a better approach in terms of management drive when it comes to that necessary service for the students to be accommodated quite appropriately, and those who are playing their part in that environment are made to conform into the legal prescripts set by such around such. And then the small question for me would be that in all what you are doing here, are there any on the basis of absence of such funds that though I qualify, find myself in a situation where you would say there's no money, would assist you, there's no money. You see, and what is that number, if you have it, and probably if you could, probably in a later stage, provide us that kind of a scenario. I loved when Honorable Pukas asked the question about loss of memory. And if you could look into this thing, I don't remember. I don't remember. You see, and ended up getting 4 years in prison because of failure of memory. You see, so there are some of those things. So I was not necessarily laughing into what you were trying to say, but I remember 1987. You see, someone on the dock saying, "I don't remember." You see, so that's what it is. Thank you very much. If you could just answer me that question, then thereafter we can have a 5-minute break and then we get into the presentation. NSFAS?
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, maybe let me start off by taking the opportunity to indicate that I think all the inputs from members, we take it as constructive that these are met in place as the organization. Secondly, Chair, to indicate that there is no instance where we have not funded a student on the basis that there is no money. You would recall, Chair, that in funding decisions, because we had then at the time assessed that there wouldn't be enough funds to cover all the students. So basically what we do to determine the funding, Chair, we first do a projection of how many applicants are we like department and a number of factors, then we determine what is needed. So hence, we find that there is no instance where we are able to say to students that are second, during the year, for example, after we've made the funding decisions, you may find that there's a desire for some to apply, but at that point, because the budget has already been set, we are not able to accommodate. But generally, there is no student that we deny on the basis of
Chairperson, there's much more to be said about NSFAS and the road they've travelled to improve governance from the period of this current board and this current management. I think on another day, both the chair and the CEO would say most of the issues that are currently under investigation emanate from the period, notwithstanding that they are fully into the applying themselves into their responsibility. But I do need, Chair, to also speak as the accounting officer of the department and say that currently the overtime. I think because of this, the minister appointed the ministerial task team to look into the development of a comprehensive student funding model. I am happy to report, Chair, to you that that work has been completed and the report has already been submitted to Cabinet. Cabinet has advised that we consult, and we are now at the final stages of consultation, and we are ready to go back to Cabinet and say these are the proposals to improve on the model, so that those who are outside of this funding model, as a result of the limitations of the resources at our disposal, are also looked into. And particularly, Chairperson, the focus is on the missing middle. Because it is important at some point that this is resolved. We are working with the Banking Association of South Africa, to try and also say that they must come to the party. We are working with the National Treasury to assist us to our country not being funded in this regard. Some of them would be NSFAS beneficiaries who would already have graduated, but they cannot register second degrees and so forth. So we are really looking at a wider scope of coverage of those who cannot afford, with the interest of ensuring that this country improves its for the economy. Chairperson, thank you very much. I think we, at that point, submit to you with an indication that matters which have been raised by the honourable members that may not have been fully responded to, we will be ready to even do that in writing if it is necessary for us to do so. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Is that a policy published for those who are of interest to comment on?
Oh, we are ready. We can share the report because it's a public report at this point in time. Of course, we are trying to manage it because it's a cabinet process to making sure that we reach that point. I think cabinet will then say, let's publish, of which then we will open to South Africa. There are 28 recommendations that at implementation, I'm confident that we will come around the issues that we are confronted with. Chair, the one issue that I wish to just say is that as a department, one issue that is important to us now, how relevant are the skills that we are developing to the needs of our economy? And I think that is actually the fundamental question going forward, because I think we are on the verge of taking serious decisions around who we fund. And at that point, when we take that, people will fall outside. Because if you look at those cases, not in any type of training or not employed, 3.4 million is 3.4 million too many. And so it is crucial for us to move towards that direction, and we will be happy at some point in the future to come here.
It starts at a lower level. Just to push them off the pipe, once you've not given what you would need higher up, the skills that are needed by the country. So curriculum development, those are policy matters which I don't have to reflect on, but I would just the upper, higher level. But that's good progress. I think if that's a level.
Let's much. Just two things from me quickly. The first, it's the suggestion from the SIU on going back to 2013. I think that would be very useful for context, because much as the problems, according to the scope, started in 2016, going back 2 years earlier will provide us some context. The last one, quickly, Chair, it's on the value of the work that is done by the SIU, which I can quickly summarize as follows to respond to the question that was raised by the honorables earlier on. One, it's recovery. The second is deterrence to those that were involved in fraudulent activities. But the third, and a very important one, it's the identification of all the loopholes that led to all this. Whilst the two other reasons cannot constitute a bookkeeper's entry, but I think they've got huge financial benefits in that if we're able to identify this is what all these fraudsters employed to do this or that, we're able to avoid that, and in that certain amount, that will be a very great financial benefit to the institution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The Office of the AG, do you have any comment to make in terms of the progress made so far? Then we close up around such.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll provide that update. We do confirm that 1st of March, our communication to NSFAS is indeed that this is not an extension, but allowing and updating and adjusting of the financial statements. The communication is that the audit will be completed by the 30th of June for 2022, and also confirmation that the current audit is also underway. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
I think let's note all those kinds of development. Would have wanted to interact with those kinds of things, but the basis of improvement of governance is well acceptable. This institution has been under administration for some time, and if there's a level of improvement around such in terms of the board and appointments and looking into the senior executives who are very key in terms of functionality, and you have heard how the members have tabled their own questions in terms of the interest, just to improve that capacity and to improve the level of accountability in the institution itself. We handle quite a lot of money for the interest of education of those who want to better their future, and the country is dependent on that future. So we somewhat appreciate the level of indulgence on the area of dealing with those weaknesses which we have experienced in the past. We hope for the better future, and here are the things which lie in front of you to deal with, to avert such a crisis environment. Thank you very much for coming, and we are going to get into the presentation on the skills fund after we've had a break for 5 minutes and come back. Thanks, Advocate. You are still here. We've spent a lot of time on the earlier presentation. It was in order through in the hands of the board and in the hands of the SIU in terms of investigations. So it was very necessary for us to look into detail of that. I'm happy that as the members have applied our mind on the areas of interest, and therefore it was justifiable that we should take that a kind of time to deal with those matters. So thank you very much, colleagues. The second area of our indulgence is the area that relates to the National Skills Fund. Yesterday, I read the President's letters. The topic was on the National Skills recorded funds to support youth in terms of the skills which are going to drive them towards economic functionality. And I thought about this meeting, government that is responsible for such. And our main worries around the capacity and the financial capability and accountability on those related skills development areas. And for the better instances of our session today is the focus on the progress so far. We've had a meeting before the close of the year, and in that meeting there are certain decisions that we took, and our interest is summarily as to whether is there any progress around those specific decisions, and then we allow members to ask questions with relations to that. One, a report was tabled to us, which was a forensic report by the department. We looked into that report. We had time to have engagement on the report, but there were some areas we felt that there are areas which are so necessary to look into the improvements around areas of that investigation. And in appreciation of that forensic report, then the outlook at the time was such that a number of institutions must work together, which includes the SIU, and secondly, we appreciated that the Hawks already have been engaged by the department, and therefore all those areas.
Welcome. I enjoyed my joyride to PE.
I know you would have wanted to go to PE over time. So you had that wish in a different form. In more serious note, we're now at the point of getting into the skills fund presentation. We've just finished one presentation that deals with the areas of NSFAS. So thanks for your arrival, Honorable Chair. I was given this responsibility in your absence. It therefore lies on you whether you want me to continue because you are here.
I think it's fine, continue.
Okay, thank you very much. No, Magunya, no, us. Yeah, I would have loved you to take over your responsibility. Nevertheless, if that's the case, let me then continue. So as part of those recommendations, resolutions by the committee, so the question is asked, how far have we gone in terms of those decisions of the committee? Fortunately, the DG was present in the meeting, and it's only the hosts that I don't see, they were present in that meeting, and the SIU is as well present. Yeah, in the same way, how far are you SIU?
We can take the committee through on how far we are.
Yes.
Since the last meeting, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, we considered the report, the forensic report, and we also considered other sources in terms of just determining whether there's a basis on which SIU could further investigate. So, Honourable Chair, we've done that. On doing so, we have determined that there's a basis on which SIU can investigate. And we have since drafted the proclamation. The proclamation has been sent through the process that will lead to it landing to the President's office. The process is firstly goes to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, and then thereafter onward to the President. So we just took the liberty of just indicating to the committee parts of the draft proclamation that we have put together, and in the main, is the part that is projected to the Honourable Committee now. It's what were the sources that we looked at in determining what SIU still needs to investigate. So you'll see there, that's paragraph 4 of the draft proclamation. That really indicates the sources of the information. As you can see, we looked at the presentation to SCOPA by the department and the report that was prepared, the forensic report. In the report, we identified that the report indicated that there are further investigations that were required. We also included those matters in the proclamation. So in 4.3, we really just indicate that importantly, the private investigating company that did the investigation did not possess, well, this is ordinarily known really, they don't possess statutory powers of investigation, and their investigation was thus hamstrung in its efforts to conduct a comprehensive investigation which would yield forensic evidence that could be used for purposes of litigation to recover and other purposes. Sorry. The report also raised issues around access to necessary information, such as bank statements, as a limitation in the report. We also obtained the Auditor General's report, the final management reports in relation to the fund. These reports were dated the 31 March 2020, 31 March 2021, and 31 March 2022. So these are, amongst others, the information that we indicate in the proclamation we have looked at and therefore came to a finding that there's further investigation that needs to be done. Without going further into the proclamation, we found that, or we do mention in the proclamation, so that the President is aware that the department has indicated that they've referred a number of matters to the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation for further investigations. And we've indicated to the President, as we ordinarily do, that we take that into account, but of course that is not an impediment for the proclamation to be signed. So we've done that so that the President is aware. There are matters in which where we indicate, and those will be covered in the schedule to the proclamation when it's issued. We just didn't really prepare to show them because they involve a number of companies, and names are mentioned of those companies, and they actually count up to about 10 projects in the proclamation. Now, of course, we do mention that we'll investigate also any improper or unlawful conduct by officials or employees of the fund or the state, or any other applicable supplier. So to a large extent, if the proclamation is signed and we do start the investigation and we pick up that there are other suppliers or other names that are mentioned, we would like the proclamation to enable us to investigate those other companies. So Honourable Chair, that's really the basis of how we determined that there are areas that we still need to investigate. We have informed the Minister in a letter dated the 28th of February that we are busy with the proclamation, and we informed the Minister and the DG in one of the one-on-one meetings we had that the proclamation is now being processed. So we're at that stage now where as SIU will wait until the proclamation is signed, and then we'll kick off the formal investigation once it's signed and gazetted. And I'm aware that the Minister really did raise the issue around the costs, which I think we addressed in the previous presentation, showing how is it that we compare with the private sector and so on, and we'll continue to bear that in mind as we kick off the investigation. Honourable Chair, I'll pause here and just really check if there are any questions. It's a process issue now. The proclamation is gone through. Once it's signed, we're going to kick off the investigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate, the DG.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, recognizing the Chairperson of the committee who's joined us. It's the right time for that matter. Chairperson, I think if I were to present the parts that refers to SIU, I'll repeat exactly what the advocate has said. I think it is very clear that the Department of Higher Education and Training work with all its agencies that are responsible government for investigations, and we support the work they do because we know they complement our own work. And in this regard, I'm happy that the progress is not reported by us, but it's reported by SSU itself. I trust that will therefore rest the issue around the cooperation of the department with any other law enforcement in this regard. And therefore, what remains for us, Chairperson, as I can see it, is just to assure members about other aspects that are not related to the investigation, but are much more about improving governance at NSF, first and foremost, but secondly, just an update on the internal processes, departmentally, how far we are. And in this regard, may I assure you, Chair, that we will also be reporting progress equally in that regard. So our presentation is in three parts. The first part is the Ministerial Task Team report and its implementation. The task team that was tasked to look into the operational model of the NSF, an initiative of the Minister, at which then that report has been implemented, and we will provide members with the progress thereof. Chairperson, in that regard, allow me, in the interest of time, to call upon the Chief Executive of NSF, Mr. Mabusela, to take us through very briefly and at high level the three parts of the reports that I have suggested. Mr. Mabusela.
Thanks very much, TG.
The screen is released. Can I show you this is the transmission hours?
Thanks very much, TG. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and Honorable Chair, and honorable members, as well as my colleagues. I'll quickly just go through, Chair, the internal processes that are supporting the configuration. My apologies, Honorable Advocate Mutibi. Yes, the internal processes, Chair, that are supporting the reconfiguration of the NSF, as we have rightfully said to say, the President has just articulated on the critical role that the NSF plays with respect to developing skills in the country just recently, and the need for this entity to basically function at the level that is required to meet that objective. This is, Chair, against that background that the Minister, it would be remembered that he then commissioned, a ministerial task team that was specifically looking at the reconfiguration of the NSF with respect to the broader business operating model of the NSF, the governance structure of the NSF, and so forth. And that report was done and completed and presented to the minister, and the DG was then assigned to implement the report. And then he proceeded the implementation of the report. The report is available for a greater detail. But then the part that we're dealing with in this presentation, it is not necessarily the report itself, the content thereof, but it is the implementation of the report as the next critical stage. Chair, what we then did out of the directive of the Director General as the accounting authority internally, we then set out to implement the report. And the report then had to be disaggregated into those work streams. There are actually 5, not 4. Those 5 work streams, which is the governance work stream, the business model, operating model, and value chain work stream, strategy, innovation, and organizational performance work stream, human resource work stream, as well as the change management work stream. Now, Chair, there are in the detailed draft plan, there are actually 5 achieve those set up. Take the governance work stream. The governance work stream, Chair, its main mandate here is basically to look at the current governance structure of the NSF with respect to the provision of the National Treasury, as has been enlisted as a Schedule 3A entity, and also to look at the Skills Development Act with respect to the definition now of the NSF as an entity in terms of its governance structure. If you look at that act, it gives the option of the, in fact, the PFMA gives 2 options, but then the one expressed by the Skills Development Act is the one that makes the Director General, for an example, as the accounting authority, whereas you could have also a board. So the governance work stream, in terms of the MTT report, is basically looking at the minister as a slant rather to a board rather than a accounting authority. So it then becomes the prerogative of the minister then to say within the mandate of the entity. So this governance stream is looking at those nitty-gritties, Chair, to say what would be then implementable or fit for purpose with projected, Chair, to achieve this. Initially they were very tight, but then based on the fact that legislative processes, they include a very long process, passage of external consultation and so forth, and therefore that was categorized as a long-term objective simply because of the purpose of consultation with respect to changing the act or legislation. Chair, then the other work stream, the business model, as well as the operating and value chain model. That one, Chair, is the work stream that looks at the core now, the core function of the NSF with respect to the current business processes that are there. So what this stream has done thus far is basically to make an assessment of as is business operating model of the NSF, the SOPs that are there, and then look at the gaps that exist vis-a-vis in comparison to what the MTT report is saying. Now, once that is done, Chair, that process, this team will then be able to implement then and adopt a business process as well as the standard operating procedures that will then easily compartmentalize or categorize the processes that are involved in the NSF value chain. We must remember that the NSF value chain, Chair, is very broad start from SDP application, skills development applications right up to the disbursement of funds. It's a huge value chain, and therefore it has to express very succinct and clear business operating process now, and as expressed by the MTT report, and then implement those recommendations that are suggested in the report itself. And we're looking at having covered some ground by the end of this current year. And then, the work stream, the strategy and innovation one, that one, Chair.
Just there. The difficulty is to looking into your presentation. We take it as a summary of what the minister's intentions are in as far as reviewal of the structure of NSFAS is concerned. It's well and fine. But one would be, I'm sure the members here would love to point them at the progress that relates to other matters. The minister spoke about this, the reconfiguration of the institution. One way or other. You have spoken on it. For us to have that kind of a document, though it's a matter of reference to the portfolio committee in detail, because it deals with the ministerial policy directive in that angle. If you could point us on what we dealt with in the previous meetings, I would urge you to assist us in handling that, please.
That's noted, the directive that you number of what we have done thus far, both with respect to this MTT report. There are other concurrent processes that have already been happening. For example, within the human resource stream, which I will then indicate that in that respect, that was the question of capacity. How far have we gone with respect to closing the capacity gaps that are within the NSF? I will present that, Chair, within the audit action plan that then integrates, this report integrates with the AG's report. And obviously then the change management stream thing, it is the futuristic thing. Once as we move through the process thereof. And obviously, Chair, within that business model, what we have done thus far, that is also expressed within the audit action plan. As I'm saying that these things run concurrently. Where in the audit action plan, for example, you will find issues that relate to financial controls as well as financial reporting. And therefore, the question is, thus far, how far have we gone? I'll touch on that in the audit action plan itself as directed by you, Chair. I think those will then satisfy.
Chair, may I crave your indulgence momentarily to ease my confusion. That presentation is not the one we have here, unless there have been changes.
Yeah. I've been looking into it.
The presentation before us is not the presentation that is there. And I think in the absence of a cross-referencing document, it will be very difficult to follow even that one. Because to get into the audit action plan, Chair, but what I was just saying is that we don't have that.
Yeah. If you look into the presentation that we have, there are elements of what you were presenting in the previous slide in page 7. And then what you are coming up with is in following page 8. The question which has made me to intervene earlier on was on the a point which Honourable Chair is dealing with in terms of points of emphasis, just to level those areas for the intention. And the accounting authority, DG in this instance, present us with a summary.
Thank you very much. Used a different computer, clearly presented to the department. First and foremost, we indicated that we have departmentally started a process of setting up an independent panel that looks into consequence management to hold accountable officials at that point. That was the last time officials that are implicated in the report have been preferred against them. And I think most importantly that hearings are currently underway regarding this. Our anticipation, Chairperson, is that the evidence coming through will implicate much bigger numbers of people that are in by the SIU, the work that is and the list. And therefore we expect that whereas currently those that are suspended and are going through our internal processes, the progress is recommended of the report right up to the last audit report, so that there is no one who escapes their accountability. I'm happy to report that progress, Chairperson, and I think that that is what part 2 of our presentation is. Part 3 is the audit action plan, which pound for pound says this is what the Chief Executive would be saying now. Mr. Mabusa.
Thanks very much, TG, and also thanks, Chair, for bringing that up. This is the correct presentation now. And then let me the 3 component. The audit action plan actually looks at what the AGSA has said, as well as the MTT report, as well as the results of the forensic report. In essence, the AGSA findings, they kind of confirm the systemic issues that are there within the NSF and the internal systemic issues that should contribute at making the NSF operate as an effective and efficient. The AG that was critical and cross-cutting, it related to the capacity issue within the NSF. The vacancy rate was quite high, and I'm actually happy to report that to date we are chunking, Chair, bit by bit the vacancies that are there within the organization to date. Of the 35 posts, that 69, we're counting up to 35 now. As of this period, there's also further progress of interviews that are sitting and so forth. The NSF didn't have a chief financial officer for quite some time, and an appointment was made last year, November. I'm just touching on the critical areas of functionality. The fund manager was also appointed in 20. That's a critical post in the sense that the fund manager actually integrates the SDPs as well as the NSF major. There's actually a very serious gap with respect to the flow of funds. The expenditure against the deliverables cannot be properly accounted for. The director for IT has also been appointed. That's another critical area, Chair, with respect to what was raised by the AG, with respect to lack of information availability within the NSF. These are other positions, Chair, that were currently involved in filling them. And as I'm saying that at the next session, the filling of rate vacancy rate will be much lower than this. And then the second finding related to the financial issues, Chair, with respect to NSF, where the AG reported that the NSF found it difficult to report their previous year accruals, the infrastructure assets, trades and receivables, as well as deferred expenditure provisions. It was just that myriad of findings around application of the GRAB standards. And Chair, I'm happy to report that though it's not a good achievement, but then since this finding, it was a recurrent finding, we then proceeded to get an AG finding that moved from a disclaimer now to a qualified audit with findings. As I'm saying, it's a progress, but a progress not really wanting to take us where we want to be, meaning that bullets that have been indicated there, particularly the continuous reconciliation, Chair, of financial records on monthly basis. It's an occurrence that was not there, and at the end of the line, you then have a huge, unmanageable financial documents internally. Hence, the AG found us wanting in this respect. The third is information where his scope was limited. He could not successfully declare whether simply because of the limitation of scope, the misstatements that were there, the lack of responsiveness to requests for information, the control environment. Since then, Chair, we have addressed these issues. We no longer have issues with respect to RFIs. When the AG respect to a COF, we respond to that, Chair. And up to this stage now, we're quite okay with respect to addressing these limitations. And then also on the IT system, which is Microsoft Dynamics, we're building up that system, Chair, progressively. And we know that at least by next year, we'll be able to have a very firm mid next year, we'll be able to have a very firm IT system within the NSF, which will largely relate to the storage of information. And then the fourth finding related to the skills development implementation itself, the skills development providers, the information that relates to them, the information that was used, for an example, by the forensic to go there and extract it and see whether what was applied for was properly used. There was limitation there, Chair, which was also discovered by the AG in the sense that there was absence of proper record. Skills development provider level, they are able to have this full portfolio of information that is required to verify their expenditure as dispersed to them. Proceeding largely indicating the fact that we were very slow in processing our determination test. And that has been addressed, Chair, in terms of internal audit. The findings that came from the AG, they are actually processed now. There are STPs that have been found wanting, and we have proceeded then to recoup monies from them with respect to the findings of the AG. Obviously, that process is initiated through internal audit process by conducting the determination test. This is critical to go without that we have developed now as the NSF, which we are able now to assess our risk, unlike previously where it was the extension of the D-head risk register. But we have now our own risk register as an given there with respect to the issues of the NSF moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I take it you are the CEO currently, acting CEO currently from the department. From the department.
Yes, from the department.
But now currently acting.
Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, that's the brief report on areas of interest covering the AG findings. Honorable Chair, Hlengwa, Honorable Sue, those three hands.
Thank you, Mr. Real Chair. Just a quick one, Mr. Chairman. On slide 8, I think ours are the same versions now. There's a comment there that indicates somewhat difference of opinion between Advocate Matibi and you guys, because not slide 8. Sorry, I've got the wrong slide. I will just find the right one. 6, is it? 6. Yeah, slide 6. So Advocate has reported that basically the application for a proclamation has been submitted, and we're waiting for the President. I think that's the way it works. But here on this slide, you're saying that we have met with the SIU to seek clarity from them and remained of the view that an SIU investigation would not be the best use of limited public resources. And we did have that conversation earlier today about the costs of SIU investigations, but I think here it's more about not the cost, but whether or not there should actually be an SIU investigation at all. Or has there been a change in the position of the NSF since this report to us was done? Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
As part of affirming SIU's presentation, I think the question relates to that.
Chairperson, I think the slide is falling behind the developments. I think the comments by the Advocate Matibi is the most accurate capturing of the status quo. We come from far, and we're here now.
Basuka kude. Bahlangene. Honorable the Chair.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think formally just apologize. The inconvenience was well beyond my control. But thank you for holding the fort. Chair, I just want to build up on what Mazambane has said. I take the point that the presentation is overtaken by events, right? But for me, the issue is the sentiment, in that the issue has always been the SIU investigating. So I think what we want on record is a confirmation of cooperation by the department and NSF to this process. Because the historical context here is important, Chair. That NSF appeared before us on the basis of disclaimed audit outcomes, and we directed that an investigation must take place. That was not easy in itself, right? So arriving at this point now is a major milestone. But now you've got Hawks investigations, and I'm just wondering, Advocate, if you could take us through the issue around the Fusion Center, the Anti-Corruption Task Team, insofar as this investigation is concerned. But I think what we really want is that confirmation on the record of cooperation, because there's been a lot of gymnastics around this particular area. My final point, Chair, is on the. I'm not going to delve much into the audit outcomes. I still think we're going to come back to those. But I wanted to zoom into slide number 9, the one of the appointments. I would really want to know specifically that those positions, before they were filled, how long they had been vacant. Because it becomes material to the turnaround outlook that the NSF and the department employs to issues that the AG raises, and why they were vacant. So the acting CEO says the chief financial officer position had been vacant for quite some time. What is that quite some time, and why did the incumbent leave, and who acted and for how long? Because this helps us piece the puzzle of what has gone wrong at the NSF. And then when the balance of those positions, those posts, will be filled, the balance of the 69, so the 34 posts that have not, the timeline towards that, and when that process will be completed. Because the issue is that NSF is really wants to be kept on a short leash, because we've not received joy for the longest of time from it. So that's in that context that this turnaround strategy, the work streams and so on and so forth, it all boils down to implementation and efficiency in that implementation. Just those two areas, Chair. But and then Advocate, when do you anticipate this proclamation to be signed? Because the nub of why we're here is that investigation. And then the NSFAS report sampled 10 projects. That scope is, as far as we are concerned, very limited, but we'll leave it to your investigative capabilities. But to register OT, even the NSFAS report pointed to things which needed attention. Thanks, Chair.
Those are the questions from the man who was supposed to be sitting here. Now he's taking my role. The pipes were smoking here, and you couldn't feel the smoke from those pipes. Maybe you could probably tell him how those pipes were filled between yourselves and the SIU in the previous presentation leading to this. DG?
I thought the chair was quite deep in his analysis of the journey travelled thus far. I think for me, what we are presenting here is a COPA as a community. It shows that where we come from and where we are. We've gradually charted 51% of posts that we reported to be vacant has been filled. And we are specific about the rest of others that have not been filled, at which stages they are. And I think we can provide details as well in terms of this. I think the most efficient way, Chair, is to make a submission, a written submission, that breaks it down in detail, to make that available, Chair. But I think it is very clear that we did not sit with you over the years, and we were people who are not committed. We had one aim, and it was to improve governance of NSF, and we can actually see the results right now. It's not what we want to see. Much more work needs to be done. That's why we started with the MTT report to show that internally we have a plan. We are working according to that plan. It's not the key subject of our conversation today, but it is important. Chair, I think it's fair as well, and to indicate that where we come from as a department, as you know, Chair, when the NSFAS investigation had started, the preference of SCOPA had always been that SIU conduct the investigation. And I think since then up to now, we've sat together and we've discussed this matter to a point where we have said, we work together in this regard. I'm very happy to leave the rest of my response to Advocate Mtibi, because he will answer the question about cooperation. I trust that when he does respond, he will pull together other members of the committee that might believe that there are problems to conclude that actually we have no problems. But we have expressed our views all the time. You will recall, Chair, that at the presentation of the NSFAS report, we said, because we had read the report first, the NSFAS report, we said we are worried about the implications of the non-declaration of the status of this report, whether it's secret or not. And we think that the committee can actually utilize its own prerogative to make declaration of whether the report is released or not. The committee did apply its mind, took a decision, immediately supported the decision. We never questioned the decision, and we accepted. And we're not going back there anymore. We are moving forward. The report was declared, and we worked within the decisions that are there. But we did advise, in the best of our opinion, without fear of favor, we advised what we accepted. So, in our opinion, I don't believe that we have different views, but I trust that what SIU will say, all of us will embrace as an indication of the progress that is in the system. Earlier on, I did make a comment about financial issues, the costs, and I think it was clear today that it's not only us who are concerned about costs. Even honourable members here have raised questions about the cost implications of this. And I also made a comment, Chair, in your absence, that we are happy now that this detail is being provided in a transparent kind of way, and we are prepared to work with the SIU in terms of ensuring that this is a fair dispensation. Remember, we're not only talking about NSFAS and the NSF investigation. We are busy with 40 universities as it is right now. People are going to court right now. We are arresting criminals that seek to undermine governance of our institutions. Others that are still thinking about doing so will soon discover our determination to making sure that they are held to account, not only them, but also internally our own. Half of those that are going to court right now are our own officials. In the college system, NSF, DDHT working with SIU again, 8 officials are going from TVET colleges. All departmental officials are in court as we speak to you. So really the issue of our relationship in working on this issue is not characterized by us doubting the capacity of a state entity to do the work. It is much more about history, where we come from, and the context at which we are, where you want to be sure that we are together. And I can assure you, as the DG of the department, that we are working well with the Hawks, we are working well with the SIU, we are working well with the police. In the words of General Libya, who was here in the first presentation, he said we are cooperating. And this question about cooperation has emerged again today, and we await the verdict of our colleagues. And if there are still issues, I wish to indicate that I will be ready to address them and make sure that if there is an inadequacies in the cooperation, this is addressed as well. That is the commitment, firm commitment, and I believe it's a commitment by our Minister, our Deputy Minister, and the DG of the department.
Thanks, DG. Head of unit.
No, thank you, Honourable Chair. Let me also take the opportunity to acknowledge and greet the Honourable Chair. I just need to reiterate what my colleague, the DG, has said. We've had several interactions. We've appeared together at Scopa when the process started. As he correctly said, we are here today, where I think there is a convergence of thoughts in terms of the proclamation that needed to be put through. And why I say there's a convergence of thoughts, and that happened after various meetings we've had with the DG. I think we also did have an engagement with the Deputy Minister. Not so long after we appeared, I think at one Scopa meeting with the department, and we did so. At that time, when we met with the Deputy Minister, we also indicated to him, by that time, he did not indicate anything contrary. So then we met the DG, we met the proclamation, which we will at all costs not duplicate the resources of government. So what we mean by that is that where Hawks has investigated, we will ordinarily not repeat the investigation that Hawks has done. The investigation by our colleagues at the Hawks, it's a criminal investigation. The proclamation, once it's signed, and we kick off the investigation, in terms of our law, if we identify areas that there might be criminal acts being committed, we will have to engage with the Hawks. So this is where interaction would be very key, where we interact, and we would then have to interact with the Hawks, either hand over that information to them, then they can proceed with the criminal investigation, and we don't repeat that investigation. So we'll have to ensure that really we are on top of what needs to be done, focus areas, interact with the Hawks, because they are there already. So we've done that before. It's not unusual, where we found that other investigating agencies, particularly the Hawks, are already at the state institution investigating. So, as I said, their focus is criminal investigation. So, our investigation, and as the proclamation would indicate, that we will be focusing on malpractice. And malpractice, it's really, if we really unpack it, it's processes, policies, and all of the others. We'll also be focusing on maladministration, as expected by the law. And under maladministration, there's also a whole range of other subcategories we look at. We look at the governance of the entity. But also the law says it in so many ways. In the provisions, the law that regulates the work of SIU is that SIU would also investigate with the intent of ensuring that any other initiative that prejudices public interest has to be pointed out. So over and above the mandate to investigate corruption, which is a criminal offense, there is a whole lot of other categories that we will look at in terms of the SIU mandate. Now, the role of the Fusion Center, Honourable Chair, Fusion Center has really proved to be a very important platform where, as law enforcement agencies, we collaborate there. It's a substructure of the anti-corruption task team. and it's used in the main to ensure that as law enforcement agencies plus financial intelligence center, NPA, and the others, we sit there and ensure that all the matters that are recorded on the system at the Fusion Center are coordinated appropriately. SARS is also there, and a whole lot of other as the investigation proceeds. So I'm informed that we will actually be looking at all the projects, and I think this came up at one of the SCOPA meetings. I think AG also was there. That there are other projects other than the 10. So we'll be looking at. My colleague indicates plus minus 30 under correction, but it's probably an estimate at this stage. But the fact is it's more than 10 that was reported on by the private investigation company. So I'm really glad that the DG has indicated that paragraph that then expressed in that paragraph. How long will the proclamation take to be signed, Honourable Chair? We will follow up. It's already at the Department of Justice. It might have been on send already. We'll check on that. But I think we have really impressed it on the Department of Justice to process it as speedily as possible. We will check and probably revert to the Secretariat in terms of where in the process it is. Yeah, I think we've dealt with the issue around the costs, because that paragraph also mentions the cost, but I think we've dealt with it elaborately earlier on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, DG Advocate. I think we are dealing with questions that have been handled by Honourable Shangwa, the Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, and I saw the Chair. The correct mistake from your part that I'm speaking on this presentation, because it's a formal document. There's an error there in relation to the SCOPA reviewed the report from the Minister on the 23rd of September 2023. It's here on it's 2022, I saw it, but it's important that we correct it because it's a formal document. In addition to the, so my question is in addition to the posts that you were mentioning that we filled this post, the clarity that I'm seeking, and maybe in the report that you have committed that you will bring to say, by this time we shall have filled, are they permanent posts, are they temporary, which ones are 5 years, which ones are permanent? So that's the clarity that I actually I also wanted to ask, but the Chair asked it that now that you are priding yourself for done 1 3 1 2 3, in your plans, how long were these vacancies, and how many others are remaining, and then categorize them in terms of this is a permanent post, this one is contractual 5 years, and so it's a question that I'm posing to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think the honourable member is given direction to say this is the information that we should infuse in the initial request that was made by the honourable Chair, and we undertake then to take those into consideration then and report back. Thanks, Chair.
Regional report. Is there any other question, comment? Great. AG reports. I think what the Chair has indicated is that we asked to get into that kind of scope. and it will help us at DG, was one other angle that you are beginning to fill in these other posts there. So how do you want to balance it up? You are filling all these other positions below the CEO, and you are leaving capacity. So your plan, and because the audit report and the response to it relates to totality of the functionality of the entity. So there's some form of intelligence which is needed in that angle.
Thank you, Chair. That is noted, and we shall include that information, but I can assure you that regarding the position of the Chief Executive, that has already been advertised, and we're at the final stage. I think we've got a date for interviews already lined up. So we are really at the final stages
there. Under the Auditor General's sessions, we'll get an appropriate response just on those areas which have been identified. The acting CEO is very happy that there's been movement from the disclosure.
We don't think there is any progress to report about. I think we are determined for clean governance, a clean audit. That's the only standard that we have. I think it's just a technical thing to show that to receive 3 conservative disclaimers, and then all of a sudden we are beginning to shift towards a different direction. It's an indication of some kind of work, but not satisfactory, and that does not please us at all. So but we assure you, Chair, that this is, and I'm glad that the Auditor General is represented here, Chair, because at some point there was an indication that the Auditor General was very concerned about poor cooperation received from NSF at some point, and that's where we come from, to a point where we have had joint workshops with the AG, to a point where right now the AG can speak for themselves that they have 100% cooperation from NSF officials. In this regard, Chair, we will also provide the detail that is missing in the areas that speak to the audit action plan.
Okay. Are there any other areas, colleagues, that you want to raise before we close this area? In absence of any other comments, questions, the Chair, let me appreciate the fact that we've had this kind of robust engagement between the department, SIU, the Auditor General, and the 2 entities, NSFAS and the National Skills Fund. We are doing so basically on ensuring a standard-based operation in as far as finances are concerned. And these 2 entities are really at the key point of ensuring that our young people would receive necessary skills. And the critical angle of the youth economic ability is based on the two areas. So we were happy that at least there is, but will still remain very much concerned in as far as your adherence into management based operational angles. And you won't be able to reach that point if your vacancies are still at the level where they stand. And therefore the concern of the committee is somewhat at the angle which is acceptable at that point. And the last thing that we think in this angle, which we very much appreciate, is the fact that there's a visible collaboration between yourselves and these other entities which relate to matters of adherence to legal prescripts. Whether talking about the Hawks, talking about the SIU, NPA, and your own processes, which are very critical in terms of disciplinary related matters. So I would appreciate that we can get some of the responses that we've referred here. Our normal reference to such is about 14 days, you see. And because we are meeting with you consistently on these matters, even without any call to yourselves, would appreciate to receive some kind of a quarterly or bi-monthly updates on these matters. Just voluntarily provide such updates, because it assists to as well build that kind of rapport between yourselves and the committee, so that we can see that there's progress on these kinds of matters going forward, so that there is no angle of constraint level of relations between ourselves. So far, I thank you very much, Advocate, and your team, and thanks, DG, in leading your team today. And of course, we would have loved that the Minister would have been here, or the Deputy Minister. I've heard their own apology, but we emphasize that point, that we would really appreciate when we have these kinds of milestones and steps going forward. It's somewhat good to have them as part of that Duhanadang, you see, on these matters. So thanks, colleagues. The meeting would be adjourned. The AG, always, not because I'm coming from that committee, but thank you very much for your...
Before you adjourn, there's just two announcements.
I would miss those announcements if you're not there. You're welcome to make those announcements. I'm back.
My co-chair. Colleagues, you do know we are scheduled to visit the Central Line with PRASA on Thursday, but in light of recent developments, yesterday we are working with SEPS. It's approved, but we will communicate. So please be on standby for Thursday, because we're going to check that Central Line. But as you know, there have been fatal developments yesterday. We convey our condolences to the Peru family as well. So we will be in touch, colleagues, by tomorrow, so that you can finalize your travel plans. The second one, Chair, next week, you know, is the leave period because of the long weekend. However, the committee is scheduled to meet on the 26th of April at 9 o'clock to 4 to have an engagement with the former CEO of ESCOM, Mr. Derrida. You are therefore, colleagues, requested to be physically in Cape Town, and I received a request from Mr. Derrida through his legal representatives to appear virtually. I have acceded to that request. However, we will be meeting physically as a committee for the purposes of pushing back on load shedding and connectivity issues. The venue will be provided, either it's M41 or the 46 or S12A of the NCOP, which is hybrid compatible. So the meeting with Mr. Derrida, colleagues, is next week. It's from, why I'm telling you now, it's from 9 to 4, so that you can make your travel arrangements in good time, because next week is a leave period. But we have applied, and for the purposes of your long weekend. So please be advised of that. And once Mr. Director's statement has been received, you will receive it immediately for the purposes of interaction. Tomorrow we are 9:30 meeting with the Road Accident Fund, same venue, and we will So that's it's 3 announcements tomorrow 9:30. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Liz, you are counting. Do you want to add the 4th one? Thank you very much, Chair, for the announcements. But let's note that the meeting next week is on Wednesday, not Tuesday, no? Yeah, Wednesday.
Wednesday the
And
26th.
I'm advised that you are all invited for lunch. It's served somewhere. I've cautiously said I'm advised. So if it's not there, don't put on me. You see? Yeah. Thank you very much. The meeting adjourns.